What have we got? What shall we look at? Let's. Okay, this is going to be a little bit fun. Sri Lanka and India, they're playing a little series, a little cheeky series, and they're playing ODIs. Finally, we're back to the age of Sri Lanka and India bilateral one-day internationals. The peak of cricket. It was one of the three formats. You had tests, you had ODIs, and you had Sri Lanka India bilateral ODI series.
Oh, yes.
Then they invented T20s, and everything went downhill from there. But remember, you might remember if you listened to the show last week, that Sri Lanka got annihilated in the first three T20s. I shouldn't be able to say annihilated when one of them was a tie and it went to a super over, but they got annihilated into that super over. I think they lost 7 for 30 to end up tying the game, and then got bowled out in the super over with consecutive wickets. It was embarrassing. And then they turned it around in the one-day stuff and notched another tie, so back-to-back ties, but there was no super over because it was a bilateral 50-over game. So it stood as a tie. And then in the second game, they bowled out India chasing, not that many, 240 or so. Sorry, in the first game, they bowled out India chasing.
Yeah.
Charatha Salanka took the last wicket, which was extraordinary. And then the next one, they bowled him out a fair way short. Van der Say Industries. Geoffrey Van der Say is back. The guy with the shades, he's about 46 by now. The last time I saw him bowling was in the World Cup in England in 2019, when he was wearing like servo station wraparound speed dealer sunglasses with like bright blue frames and a sort of orange lens while he was bowling. Like he'd been driving down the Princes Highway from Melbourne to Geelong, and he pulled in at that big servo, and he'd got himself a pie and a big Air Mice coffee, and he went, oh yeah, these look good on me, and he picked up a pair of shades. They were, $15, $5 off if you bought a pie, and he went and bowled in them through the World Cup. And here he is again, rolling out his leg. He's 6 for 33. Geoffrey's back.
Geoffrey's back, and I'm surprised you've forgotten the last time you saw him in person. He made his test debut in front of us in Gaul in 2022.
Oh, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, when 2 or 3 of them went down because of COVID, and they had to. That's when Prabhat Jayasuriya made his debut as well, and Geoffrey Van der Say.
Yes, with 12 for.
Yeah, I mean, it's Geoffrey Van der Say is a name.
I guess it's that I wasn't watching TV. Like the last time I remember seeing him on television was 2019, whereas I was watching him out the commentary box window in that particular one. But yeah, you're right.
And look, Geoffrey Van der Say, I mean, it sounds like a name straight from Seinfeld, right? Like, I don't know why. Like, I'm sure there was a
It's Vanderlei Industries. It's literally from, it's Art Vanderlei.
That's correct. Art Vanderlei, indeed, yeah. And just before we even get into the cricket, you're right? I'm sure the people who run cricket, we know where they live. They know which part of the world they come from. They must have thought, oh, the Olympics are on. Like, what series can we think of to like combat the Olympics in terms of ratings?
Yes. What's going to bring back the crowds?
And well,
Sri Lanka.
But in Sri Lanka ODIs, like the T20s, they tried the first week, but just think about it, right? The first week when the Olympics are just heating up, the opening ceremony and some events here and there, a lot of gold medals for Australia in the pool, Gert by sea, the T20s, right? The T20s. But then when the athletics start and suddenly the viewership goes through the roof in the Olympics, India, Sri Lanka ODIs. And look, I mean, so far it's been a blockbuster series. And before people even get into, it's just Sri Lanka beating an Indian team, which I'm sure they've rested all their players. And the T20 team did have a feel of a new look team, a lot of new-ish names in there. But this is a heavy-duty Indian ODI side. Like, we have Rohit Sharma as captain. We have Virat Kohli. You have KL Rahul keeping wickets. You have Washington Sundar and Kuldeep Yadav and everyone in there. So it's like a proper team. Shubman Gill, like, India's best one-day batter in recent times. And so for the Sri Lankan team and good old Geoffrey to take six wickets and roll them out is a pretty significant achievement. And not to forget, now that they've won one and tied one, their sick record of, I think, 12 bilateral ODI series that Sri Lanka have lost to India comes to an end. They can't lose the series from this point on. So it will go down in the annals of Sri Lankan cricket history as a great achievement. Like, Olympics, Paris, who cares? Sri Lanka avoiding a ODI series defeat, and who knows, they have a chance to win it now. India don't.
Yeah. Yeah, Sri Lanka retain the Ashes with a 1-all
There you go.
result in the series. Now, I'm just having a brainwave here. If you're talking about competition with the Olympics, between cricket and the Olympics, remember in 4 years' time, cricket's going to
Yeah.
be in the Olympics. And there's been a fair bit of debate about what the format should be, how you should do it, 6 teams, 8 teams, qualifiers, T20 format, 100 format. England were trying to push that for a while with an incredible degree of delusion. What if we go to the most popular kind of cricket in the world and we say the cricket in the Olympics is going to be a 7-match ODI series between India and Sri Lanka? No one else comes. Does India get the gold medal? Sri Lanka get the silver medal? India get the bronze medal? 2 teams play, 7 games. That seems fair. That seems entertaining. That's going to get eyeballs on it. That's going to get bums on seats. LA 2028. What else do you want? But 7 ODIs, maybe get Ramesh Kalavatara back, maybe have at least use some retro uniforms, do some blast from the past stuff, get a couple, everybody has a mobile phone in the dugout, and let's make this something that people want to come and see.
Yeah, I mean, Kumar Dharmasena can umpire at one end and bowl at the other end. I think
bowl at the other,
Yeah, bowl at the other end. Let's look. It's got the most proven track record in sporting history. India Sri Lanka ODIs. It racks up the numbers. India mostly win as well. I mean, they win every time. This is the one time they have it. But you never know. Maybe there's a repechage for that tight game. Maybe they'll play that again. Because we are in Olympic season. They get another go. Well, if you can have that in athletics at the Olympics, why not in an India Sri Lanka series? Which very well could be an Olympic sport in itself.
West Indies and South Africa, Bharat. They're about to play a couple of test matches and some white ball stuff. The tests are in Trinidad and Guyana. Marco Janssen's not playing for South Africa. Anrich Nortje is not playing for South Africa. And despite losing those 2, they still have a pretty good-looking pace attack of Rabada, Ngidi, Berger, and Coetzee are all going to play. They're all in the squad, so they all could play, but they probably won't all play because probably one of them might play because they're going to be spinning tracks in Trinidad and Guyana. But then, interestingly, the West Indies have a bunch of quick bowlers as well. So it's going to be curious to see how this pans out. Kemar Roach is back fit. Shamar Joseph will be there. Jaden Seals will be there. West Indies have picked 3 spinners. They've got Brian Charles. They've got Gudakesh Moti. And they've got the Warricane, the man the authorities came to blame for something that he never done, put in a prison cell. But one time he could have been the champion of the world, Jomel Warricane. They don't have Sinclair because he broke his arm during that. It was Mark Wood that hit him in the arm, didn't it, and fractured his arm. So they've got the 3 spinners. South Africa have got Maharaj and Dane Pete, and I think that's it. I don't think they've got a third. But it's going to be curious to see how they sort of balance these attacks and what kind of approach they take, and whether West Indies can take their relatively chastening trip to England, but one where they still got some good news lines out of it, and jump on South Africa on home soil.
And West Indies in recent years have developed a decent home record in Test cricket, and South Africa is one team who've always had the better of them in the Caribbean, at least in this century. And see, there will be a lot of intrigue around the makeup of the South African side. Only 3 players from their last Test series are around. That's the one in New Zealand where they sent a bunch of new players, which kind of
with David Bedingham.
West Indies coming to Australia with a lot of new players. So that was when the latest album about the death of Test cricket was released. And it did pretty well before Shamar Joseph toured through Australia at the Gabba. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. There are, the guys who will be there are guys who made a name for themselves, like David Bedingham and the rest. But yeah, I mean, South Africa, is this their strongest Test team? Probably. I don't know. Well, Bauma's back, Carl Verena is back, and like you said, the bowling's looking very strong. So you would back them in, but yeah, I mean the West Indies will back themselves in, with the spin attack that they have. How difficult is it going to be to say Brian Charles and stop there? Like for 20, 30 years or 40 years, we're so used to saying Brian Charles Lara. Like, so it's going to be a challenge for the commentators to just stop at Charles and not say Lara after that. But yeah, I mean, look, Trinidad, we don't get a lot of cricket there these days, do we? International cricket. And I did make a pilgrimage visit to the Queen's Park Oval when I was there for the semi-final. And yeah, so I wonder if South Africa will even play the third seamer and just stick with the two and bowl a lot of spin, because West Indies will likely go that way. Alzari Joseph is being rested, you said. Yeah, there will be some intrigue around pretty much every time South Africa play Test cricket, considering neither of these two teams are going to play a lot of Test cricket in the next cycle. So yeah, there will be a bit of novelty around it as well.
So Bavuma there and Markram are pretty much the experience with the batting. Tristan Stubbs is going to bat 3, which is interesting. I would like to see that. He did play a couple of grindy sort of test kind of knocks on that New York pitch in the T20 World Cup. Yeah, David Bettingham keeping his spot, which is great. Ryan Rickleton, another one that there's been some interest in. And the Windies have brought back Casey Carty and Tevin Imlach as far as the batting's concerned. Justin Graves is back to in that all-rounder spot with Sinclair out. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting one. We'll keep our eye on it. I was struck by a story that popped up about the Pakistan Cricket Board, one of our favourite cricket boards when it comes to stories. This was an uncredited report on Cricinfo that I haven't followed up beyond this, but the initial notes interest me. Domestic cricket in Pakistan, it says, will now comprise 3 first-class tournaments, 2 List A tournaments and 3 T20 tournaments, as the PCB adds 3 new competitions at the top level of cricket. A 5-team champions tournament, which is supposed to bridge the gap from domestic to international cricket. They've made up 5 new teams called the Dolphins, the Lions, the Panthers, the Stallions, and the Wolves. Pakistan, obviously famous for its lions, its panthers. I guess they have horses. Do they have wolves? Are there any wolves in Pakistan? I couldn't imagine. Maybe. No, I mean, there are lots of mountains, but not a lot of wolves.
A lot of stallions.
Anyway, they will they will have a Champions One Day Cup, a Champions T20 Cup, and a Champions Pentangular. Now they're talking our language. A first-class Pentangular tournament. Not since the days of the Bombay Gymkhana in the 1930s have we had enough Pentangular first-class cricket, but it's back, baby. It's back in a big way. They won't be super long tournaments, but they will be held to try to get players from that level below and put them into these representative sides, I guess. So this interests me a lot. They're going to have the Qaid-e-Azam, which they already have, the main first-class tournament. They also have the President's Trophy, which is a first-class tournament, and the President's Cup, which is a 50-over tournament. And they also have the National T20 Cup and the Pakistan Super League. So now they're going to add 3 more competitions to those. It's glorious. It's very PCB. It's pentangular. It's amusing. I'm going to be interested to see how that pans out.
I'm going to be very interested to see how Basit Khan reacts to this, because he's, great man Basit, but he never holds back. And, you can see him on YouTube or on social media when he does his TV columnist role, not columnist, sorry, TV expert analyst role. And then he will always talk about, so he and his legendary father came up with a plan to kind of professionalize Pakistan domestic cricket, and they did that years ago. And you'll always hear him talk about how the PCB never really heeded anything from it. But he doesn't hold back when he talks about the structure of Pakistan domestic cricket. I'm just gonna drop him a message now. It's very early in the morning in Pakistan. I'm sure Bazit would be all over it. But especially I'll ask him about the Pentangular, the return of the British Raj. He said.
Is he a Dolphins guy? Is he a Wolves guy? Is he a Stallions guy? What's his vibe? You've got to work out where Basit Khan sits in the ecosystem. They're sort of like the Incan deities. You have the panther, you have the snake, you have the puma. So they've gone this way. They're looking towards the heavens and how to ascend in an Incan way, the PCB, and I've always said that about them. A little bit of the mighty South Aussies news, Bharat, from your part of the world. Ryan Harris will step into coach the South. I was going to say South African team. He won't. The South Australian team, following in the steps of Jason Gillespie in terms of being very popular fast bowlers from South Australia, or at least who played for South Australia, who everybody likes. And it's Nathan Mack time, Nathan McSweeney to captain.
Yeah, the return of the Northern Suburbs hero, Ryan Harris. He's a proud Northern Suburbs man. And yeah, I mean, he started his career here, went off to play in Queensland for quite a while. But he came back a couple of years ago, was it? Or was it last season when he was in bowling coach? Yeah, it was last season, bowling coach. And then he was named as interim coach once Jason Gillespie left. And speaking of Pakistan, went there to become their test coach. And yeah, I mean, he's one of the more humble cricketers I've met, or former cricketers I've met. I've been fortunate enough to do some radio commentary with him. And yeah, I've got to know him decently. And he was very excited with bringing over one of the first things he did as interim coach was bring Jason Sangha and Mackenzie Harvey over. Mackenzie Harvey also best friends with Jake Fraser McGurk, so that helps as well. So there was some promising signs from the Redbacks last summer when they started strongly, but then kind of fell down the pecking order in the Sheffield Shield table. So he's got some under-19 coaching experience as well. He was Australia under-19 coach. So from all reports, he's really good at working one-on-one with players. So this will be his big challenge, first time in charge of a full charge of a state team, and a state team which, as you know, has underperformed for years and years and years. But also, an interesting mix the way it works here with the clubs having a big say on selection and all of that. It's not an easy job, as Jason Gillespie found out, but, did a good job during his tenure, the last 4 or 5 years. So you're right. The reins go from one famous fast bowler from South Australia to another mighty South Aussie, Ryan Harris. And yeah, I think he'll do a good job with them. Bowling's not been a problem at all for them if they can get their batting going. Like I said, with the 2 new inclusions and Nathan McSweeney, watch out for that name. He's going to be playing Test cricket very soon. I've heard some really good things about him from the Australian selectors. They made him the captain of the Prime Minister's 11 side last year as well. So it's in good hands with Nathan McSweeney and Ryan Harris.
And Otis Gibson to leave Yorkshire is an interesting move as well, where, Yorkshire, after the racism scandal, really needed to appoint a coach of colour to show that things were starting to change in one way or another after all of the issues with their previous coaching staff. But it hasn't been that long an appointment, and Yorkshire have gone poorly on the field, and their finances are terrible, and old mates trying to sell off the club and all the rest of it. So I'd be curious to know Otis Gibson's reasons for deciding whether it's just time to get out of there because things are going to go from bad to worse, or whether it's just that he's done that gig for a couple of seasons now and that's enough.
Yeah, it will be. And one thing about Otis Gibson is he doesn't hold back. He will speak his mind, much like I was listening to the wonderful Jason Holder interview on our show recently that you did with him. And much like Jason Holder, Otis Gibson has always spoken his mind. So it'll be interesting to see where, what led to him leaving, or what led to this happening. So yeah, watch this space. Maybe that could be the next interview you get with Geoff Levin.
Few other games we'll be watching. There's an Australia A and India A women's series over the next week or so. Talia McGrath captaining Australia A, which seems weird, honestly. I mean, Talia McGrath could be captaining Australia, really, after Meg Lanning stepped down. That was genuinely one of the options with, rather than appointing Elisa Healy, if they could have gone to McGrath or Gardner as the next generation. But she's not coming back from injury. She's just captaining the A side, coming off a winter at home. Taylor Bellamy is sort of building up after, she's always seems to be coming back from injury and trying to get her game up and running. It's a pretty strong Australia A side. Maitland Brown's there, Nicola Hancock, Kim Garth, so that's a good seam attack. The Secret Life of Katie Mack is there. Nicole Feltham and Tess Flintoff, who've been of ascending the ranks for a while with Matty Dark, Charlie Knott, a lot of that that sort of next tier of younger emerging players. So that should be pretty good to watch.
Yeah, and it's a pretty good-looking India A side as well. They have some women who made a name for themselves in the WPL. So it's going to be multi-format. But Kiran Navgire, who had such an impact at the top of the order with her big hitting skills, and but just it's the official start of the cricket season in Australia. It's going to be a long one. We're still just in August. But obviously they're playing in the dry part of the country, so it'll be good. Rain will not have an impact on it, but it's going to be live streamed, so you can tune in and watch it. And it's because the Indian women do come back, don't they, for an international series just around the time after the Women's Ashes, if I'm not mistaken, or before the Women's Ashes. So you can see some new names and some seasoned names that you're used to before you kind of as a build up to that series. And summer cricket's back, baby.
And finally, the 100 has been happening, which I am going to be honest and say I have paid no attention to. I have seen none of it, but that is okay. We don't always have time to watch everything. What I am aware of is that they're playing the one-dayers, the no longer Royal London, now Metrobank Fever, 50-over games with all of the players who aren't good enough to get picked in the 100. Dominic Sibley, 149 off 142 balls for Surrey, hitting 4 sixes along the way. They didn't quite chase down 300 and something, but they nearly did. That's weird. I'm almost tempted to watch. I swore that I would never watch a game that he was batting in for the rest of my life, just because it's not his fault. I'm not blaming him. It just makes me feel so uncomfortable watching what he does with his body when he's batting. But maybe he doesn't do that anymore. Maybe he just clouts them over mid-wicket. I don't know. But that scorecard has intrigued me, I've got to say. A couple of other interesting bits and pieces. Dinesh Karthik's going to play in the SA20 in the South African competition. This is just interesting because, I'm wondering, so because the last time he played for India would have been 2022 in that T20 World Cup, presumably he'll be at the point where he doesn't need an NOC, doesn't need a no objection certificate from the BCCI, but he still does a lot of commentary and so on the TV in India and that sort of thing. So presumably he must have approval, which makes me wonder, are we going to start seeing gradually, with retired players first, but then who knows, the spread of the IPL world where Indian players do start to get to bring some of that marquee star power to some of the other T20 leagues around the world?
It is much more significant, this development, than a lot of people would gather. And don't forget, Dinesh Karthik's also retired from IPL cricket. So that kind of gives him the license to go and play in a league which is largely funded by the IPL and IPL owners. So I think this will be the future, even if you don't see a lot of current contemporary Indian players going and playing in these leagues, especially these leagues. I'm not saying suddenly you'll have them playing in the 100 or whatever, till obviously the IPL owners go and buy the clubs over there. But for now, I think you'll see this filtration of like players going through recently retired players. And Dinesh Karthik is probably the most recently retired player. He just, like I said, played his last game in the IPL a few months ago, so he's very fresh. And but I think it is the future. The franchise owners, like I've always said, will eventually start having a bigger say on how cricket is run. That's just how the reality of sport and business coming together the way it has. So but it is because of the Olympics and everything else happening, I don't think it'll get the kind of mileage that it would have otherwise. But interesting to see that. Watch the space.
The other interesting bit about no Indian players in the 100 is there are Indian players in the Metrobank Cup. So they can't get star Indian players to play in the 100. But Ajinkya Rahane is playing 50-over cricket in England in basically the second div comp. Prithvi Shaw is there playing, and Venkatesh Iyer is there playing as well. All of them are playing 50-over cricket in England, which just seems funny to me. Surely you try to I don't give a shit how Ajinkya Rahane is hitting them in the IPL. Surely you try to get him 100 contracts just so that you've got Rahane on the scorecard in the 100. It's amusing.
It is, but it just goes back to the fact that 100 is direct competition to the IPL, and there's no one-day league. So, the old argument of the BCCI not wanting to dilute their product in a commercial sense anyway. So, Indian players have always played in the white ball setup or 50-over, 40-over tournaments in England alongside the T20 Blast and now the 100, and that'll always be the case. But like I said, but once you will see the IPL owners have an impact on the 100 and what's happening there, it will change. Dinesh Karthik will probably be heralded as the first of many who will go that way.
It wouldn't happen in Pakistan, where you would be in direct competition with the 7 List A tournaments being run by the PCB. All right, that has brought us to the end of our show today. Bharat Sundaresan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. You're most welcome. And I'm sure we'll keep chatting about the Olympics and what's to come. Weightlifting, that's what I'm really looking forward to next. But yeah, there'll be something else which will catch my eye, and I will drop you a message for sure.
Very good. If you want to back in what we're doing, head to patreon.com/thefinalword. You can sign up, support the show, play Nerd Pledge, get involved with our Storytime History show on the weekend, join our online community, and get yourself the ad-free feed. Why wouldn't you? It sounds like the sensible thing to do. Thanks to Westfield London, Westfield Stratford City for sponsoring the show. We'll have Storytime coming up on the weekend, and on we go. This has been The Final Word. We'll see you later.
And just a final word on the final word for the show. Boys and girls, like I said, always trust your own bag of chalk.